Hello, I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors. And today I'm joined by Sally Ann Pitt in another of my video series on insights and advice for the internal audit profession. And we focus a lot on the challenges the profession is facing, particularly in this COVID environment. Sally Ann is no stranger to the IIA. She is based in Melbourne, Australia. She is the managing director of the Pitt group there, and she is a key member of the IIA's global board of directors and continues to play a number of leadership roles on IIA committees and initiatives. She's the author of the Internal Audit Foundation's book, Internal Audit Quality, Developing a Quality Assurance and Improvement Program. Sally Ann is a leader in the internal audit profession who works with clients across the public sectors. Her company, the Pitt Group, supports organizations facing disruption by promoting quality and agile audit solutions. That includes, among other things, leveraging data analytics and data visualization and audit planning, assurance mapping, and reporting processes. Sally Ann, it's great to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Richard.
Let's dive right in, Sally Ann. A lot of internal auditors have brought up to me and are talking among themselves about this challenge of quality. Do you and your company really, I think, maintain a laser focus on this topic of quality? How must internal audit not lose sight of quality during all of the disruption we're going through in COVID-19?
Look, it's a great question because obviously COVID has changed completely the way that organisations work and the way that they interact with their customers and their stakeholders. And that in turn has changed the way internal audit does its work, both to respond to the broader organisation, but both in the way that they can actually go out to workplaces, go out to different sites and be able to do the internal auditing that they've done in the past. So, internal audit needs to think about how they can use this time to both make sure that they are ensuring quality, but also it actually can provide some opportunities as well this time to perhaps do things in a way that might be a little bit different and possibly even a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's great insight. It's, we have to get innovative when we're working in the environment we
Absolutely.
are now. So, COVID has brought a lot of challenges for our profession, and these include involving us in areas where we might not have been in before, or places we may not have stepped before. With these new pressures, what do you think is the most crucial for internal audit? What are some of the most crucial things that internal audit needs to keep in mind in terms of conforming with the code of ethics?
Look, it's quite a tricky environment for internal auditors because I see places like some of my clients, internal audit functions are getting involved in activities that they would never have been involved in the past. They've had to, help the organisation respond and help the organisation be agile. So in some cases, the internal audit functions, are now starting to ask the question about objectivity. Have they got involved in areas that have any potential to impact their objectivity? How do they ensure that they don't impact their objectivity? Because the important thing for internal auditors is to still add value and still be able to respond to the organisation. So for all those places that it's been what we'd describe as all hands on deck, that's been great in the short term, but in the longer term, internal auditors need to think about how that impacts the work they do and how ultimately they're going to provide assurance over some of these activities.
No, I agree. But it's also one of those challenges if you're asked by management to, roll up your sleeves and help us on the operating side. We could push back and say, yes, but if I do that, then I won't be able to audit it later. Management may say, well, if you don't do it, there won't be anything to audit later. So it's really almost existential in some organizations. There's almost an existential threat that they're facing. And so as internal auditors, we really have to take a much broader and different view of what that means.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I think for some audit functions, they've looked at other elements as well, or need to start thinking about other elements of the code of ethics, in terms of things like confidentiality and the way that internal audit functions are operating now, and for a lot of them working remotely, working differently than they have in the past, how they ensure that they maintain confidentiality over audit evidence, how they undertake interviews and record interviews, or record capture audit evidence during audits. And in the past, I still have some clients who've used a lot of paper-based evidence and used a lot of physical evidence. How they can replace that sort of evidence with now working in an electronic world and working remotely, is a big challenge, but an important challenge, because obviously that confidentiality issue is a huge issue and a really important one.
Absolutely. Competence is really critical, isn't it? What are some of the ways for internal audit departments to continually improve their operations, and particularly when it comes to competence of the team?
Look, I think for some audit functions, they're facing a new world, and they're doing things in a different way, and they're using different technology than they've used in the past. And that's where I see this environment actually is potentially providing some opportunities, because I think it's accelerated some of the use of technology, and that some audit functions have been a bit resistant to. But what that can also mean is there can be internal auditors out there who really don't have the skills and don't have the competencies to be able to use some of those technologies. So that's going to be really important for functions, to make sure that their auditors do have the competence to be able to do this work, and to be able to audit remotely, to be able to use some of the tools and software that they will need to going forward.
Sally Ann, as I said in the introduction, I know quality is a very important focus for you and your company. What are some ways internal audit can assess the quality of their organization during this time?
Look, it's a great question, because I think for some functions, they automatically think about someone else coming in and assessing quality and doing perhaps an external assessment. But, that really is quite a small part of the way they should be managing their quality. And there's lots of ways that they can continue to look at quality and to manage quality. And that could be through things like using remote software like we're using, Zoom type software, using virtual team meetings to make sure people are continuing to have those conversations, that they're continuing to supervise work. Particularly if you've got an audit function with less experienced auditors, you need to be able to provide them with the oversight that they need. But for some functions, they might need to be looking at things like maybe putting in timekeeping systems to look at, not to keep track of how much people are working, but really to look at how long is it taking to do some things now that we're doing things differently and doing things in a virtual way. And should we be allocating more time to audits? Should we be allocating less time to audits? So some of those efficiency and effectiveness type areas, not even so much are we just conforming with the standards, but they're probably some of the aspects in terms of quality that there are opportunities over this time to really think about and potentially to improve.
I've always said when internal auditors stop and really look at how much time it takes to complete an engagement, and they price it out based on what is it actually costing, I think it really then allows them to focus on what are the parts of that engagement, and what are the processes and methodologies that are the least efficient. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And, I've had audit functions that I've looked at who can produce volumes of working papers, literally folders of working papers, and are quite proud over the level of documentation that they've got for all of their audits. And yet, when I go through those, the quality of the product, often it bears no resemblance at all to the amount of working papers that they've captured. And conversely, they can be spending time, weeks putting together working papers and not getting out the results of the audit. Or they might be spending, weeks finessing an audit report, and in the meantime, the issue that they were going to flag has created real problems for the organisation. So sometimes it's about not necessarily trying to do 100%, but trying to do things in a way that's quick, that's responsive, and that captures the key issues and that alerts management to the key issues as early as possible.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you and I have studied at the same school on this topic, because it's the same challenge I've seen for 40 years. I used to have internal auditors who worked for me when I first became a chief audit executive, who took great pride in generating file drawers for their entire file drawer full of work papers for a single engagement. And it was a waste of energy. Sally Ann, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart, and I really appreciate your willingness to share it and share your perspectives with our viewers around the world.
Thank you. It's been great having a chat.
I'm Richard Chambers, President and CEO of the Institute of Internal Auditors, and thanks for joining us.